In this episode, we speak with Colleen Corwell, the Managing Director, Head of U.S. Financial Services Compliance and Regulation at Kroll. Colleen leverages more than 20 years of experience in assisting industry firms navigate complex regulations by serving as in-house and outsourced Chief Compliance Officer for more than 20 firms, including registered investment advisors, investment companies, and broker-dealers. Colleen was recognized as one of the top 25 financial services consultants and leaders of 2024. Kroll is the leading independent provider of risk and financial advisory solutions by leveraging unique insights, data, and technology to help clients stay ahead of complex demands. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the Executive Chairman of Market Insight Media and Managing Partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Colleen, great to be with you. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, RJ.
So it's not always that I get to speak with a former coach, NCAA coach. Tell us about your background in soccer. I find that super cool. I'm knee deep into girls soccer right now with my daughter. But tell us about your background in soccer.
Well, I went to school at William & Mary in Virginia and played soccer there. And then after I graduated, I lived in a soccer house with a bunch of former players. One of the players at the time was Shannon Higgins, who was on the national team at the time. And she had recently got the assistant coach job at GW. And then she came home one day and she's like, oh, American needs an assistant coach. I was like, oh, great. I don't even remember what job I had at the time, but I was like, I definitely would do that instead. So I took the job there and I coached through the first season, and then the head coach left. So I was head coach at age 23. So I was fairly young as a head coach. And then from there, I did that basically all through my 20s for 8 years. Then I segued to New York and got into finance. Typical path to finance, right?
I have such high regard for coaches because they're able to bring out the best in their players. And it requires such a profound understanding of human emotion, of how to know what to say to certain people, almost predicting how they would react to what you would say. And everyone's different. Did you find that you had kind of a natural talent at that?
I mean, I will say I did learn from the School of Hard Knocks because I was 23, right? So what did I know at 23? But certainly I had to learn quick on my feet and become very adept to, leading a group of 25, 30 people, having, everyone get along and working together and facing the same direction to achieve the goals, which was basically to win games, right? So it was a fun time. It was a time of learning. I mean, all those types of things. I mean, coaching, as you were alluding to, is more of an art than a science, because one way of motivating someone or inspiring someone, people are all different. Some people, if you even use the wrong tone of voice, they're going to cower and not be focused, where someone else might really fire them up, right? And encourage them to do more, be more engaged. So it was a good skill set to learn and have the opportunity to work with at a very young age.
Mm-hmm. Has it carried over into your professional life, maybe what you learned as a coach?
Yeah. I mean, we have a group here in the US. For our particular group is just under about 50 people. So day to day, we're dealing with all different types of people that are, serving our clients. And how do we engage people more? How are we doing our training? All those types of things, keeping people learning and growing, engaged. And also having fun, right? That's a big part of it too. I mean, you spend a good bit of your time at work, so you have to have a bit of fun as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was delighted to see on my calendar that I was speaking with you and speaking with someone from Kroll. I actually met Jules Kroll. We were in a meeting together going back 10, 15 years, and I found him to be very endearing. This was in my former life as an investment banker. And he's built an amazing business. I know he has multiple business. I think Kroll is owned by someone else now. So maybe that's a good segue into tell us about, for the benefit of our audience, Kroll overall, and then your role within Kroll.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I ask people, what do they know about Kroll, you can get 40 different answers because we've got 40 different business lines. So some people know Kroll, for example, with valuation, because we're number one in the world with valuation. So that's a very large business line of ours. Cyber is also a large business line of ours as well. We're number one in incident response. We've got due diligence and investigations. That's a longstanding legacy business. We do tax services, we do restructuring, we got whistleblower services, we have end of fund life solutions. We have all types of services. Our particular group is we provide compliance and regulatory support to registered investment advisors, FINRA broker dealers, and NFA and CFTC clients. So basically what we do is we can provide like all of compliance support for those types of regulated firms. And if you look at the landscape of, for example, like RIAs, registered investment advisors in the US, 70% are managing under a billion AUM, and almost 90% are managing under 5 billion AUM. So most firms are small, right? So economics aren't great, especially if you're sub 1 billion, to hire a full-time on-site CCO. So many times what you'll have is you'll have a dual-hatted CFO, CCO, CEO, CCO, or whoever picks the short straw has to wear the CCO hat. So we will typically plug in with that person, doing all the normal haunts as far as like the testing and monitoring, the marketing review, the electronic communications review, all those types of tasks that firms can outsource. And then we have a regular call or certain cadence of a call to kind of update them on what we're doing. They'll update us on developments on the business side. In certain bespoke situations, you will actually be the outsourced CCO, but mostly we're plugging in as support for broker dealers, RIAs. We also can support firms when they get into an SEC exam. We have a team of mostly former CCOs and former regulators that support these engagements. In fact, before I segued into consulting, I worked at a couple of the big firms. I worked at Capital One, Ameriprise, ING. And then when I got into consulting, I worked with a firm that actually focused on outsourced CCO. So I've been CCO both in-house and outsourced for over 20 firms. And I've been in 18 regulatory exams as CCO with both FINRA and the SEC. So you may not be able to tell, but I have gray hair from all those exams. But basically, we support firms from like fund launch to when they're in the ongoing phase until they get, a regulatory exam.
And maybe taking a step back and thinking about the macro picture, it seemed for a time we were on the upswing of increased regulation and the need for compliance services. Now it's kind of like, is there a loosening up in regulation, or is financial services just a completely different beast where you're not going to loosen up there?
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. The SEC under Gensler was a very aggressive rulemaking SEC. And now with the new administration, we've seen recently approximately 600 SEC people that are taking the early retirement. So there'll be some brain drain there. So will that mean less exams? Will that mean less enforcement actions? I mean, what we're telling clients is this: look, you're getting an exam anywhere from 1 to 10 years, let's say. Most firms are probably getting an exam once every 5 to 8 years. So if the political winds shift in the next administration, your review period's now. So you can't really take your foot off the gas, because if you get a next SEC exam in, let's say, 3-4 years from now, like they're reviewing the time period now. So we haven't really seen any real fulsome deregulation. We did see more recently a modification on the new marketing rule, which was actually sense. It was like they rolled back the net gross at the asset level, which never really made sense to begin with, in my opinion only. But I think it's also going to be like the era of crypto. So we will probably see more regulation in that space, because that's what the crypto firms have been asking for. They've been asking for regulation, right? Previously, it was being regulated by enforcement action, which, it's very hard to run your business just waiting for the next enforcement action. So I think the executive order on digital assets that came out basically gave some aggressive timelines. I think it was 30, 60, and 180 days to come out with like a complete framework, and the committee includes people from across different departments. So I think that will be a net good thing. But yeah, we're just staying on top of it. As far as we can tell, the new anti-money laundering rule is still a go. So we
Mhm.
do have firms preparing for that because the effective date for that is January 1st. The interesting thing with that, last October, I was in Dubai doing a panel on AML, anti-money laundering. And the question I got asked most after the panel was, wait, you all don't have AML requirements? Because the rest of the world does, right? So it was kind of interesting that we aren't really keeping up with global standards, as far as AML regulations for RIAs. So I think when they did the Treasury assessment of AML under the Biden-Harris administration, they were finding that there was quite a bit of money laundering happening through RIAs. So I think that that will probably stick. And look, I mean, the administration ran on a very populist message, right? Where that the SEC and Paul Atkins will continue to protect the retail investor, right? Like, I don't think that goes away. So to the extent that all the rules and regulations and the framework that's set up to kind of protect the mom and pops, like, I think that will continue. What you'll probably see less of is the controls cases. So for example, the past couple of years, you've seen a lot of multi-million-dollar fines on electronic communications and books and records failures. Now, I don't necessarily think that we're going to see a lot of enforcement actions around cases where there's no actual harm to investors. Like, I think where there's actual harm, I think the SEC will continue to crack down on bad actors. But in the case of, hey, you faulted on this rule, I think they'll probably be like, hey, it's still cited in the exam report, but you have to just remediate.
Mhm. There's probably a lot of different areas that you have to address when it comes to full scope compliance. What are the kind of like three big areas that you're always having to monitor and just be on guard with? You mentioned like marketing. I guess you could
Mhm.
always have materials that go out from an RIA that are perceived as solicitation. Is that a common thing?
Yeah. So I guess now about 2 years ago, the SEC came out with the new marketing rule, which basically codified years and years of case law. So it was kind of overdue. And so in all the exams that we've been in, meaning we're helping out clients with, and we're always in a number of exams because we have hundreds of clients. So it's actually a benefit to clients that we can kind of keep a beat where the SEC is focusing. And yeah, so marketing has been in almost every document request, marketing materials. So we always suggest to firms to keep a marketing log because they're going to request it. There's nothing in the rule that requires you to keep a marketing log, but keep one because they ask for it. And we plug in with a lot of our clients to do the marketing review or assist with the marketing review. So that's definitely a big area that they're focusing on. They're still focusing on like allocation of expenses, what you're booking to the fund versus what the advisor is paying for, like that continues to be a focus. Electronic communications, like I mentioned before, that's been a very big focus, and lots of big enforcement actions and fines in that space. I guess generally just making sure that firms have a robust testing program in place. Like Rule 20647 requires testing in an annual report. So
Mhm.
many times we're engaged to do that because it's not also just not a bad idea to have a third party kick the tires. If you're the CCO kind of testing your own stuff, you're kind of like, oh, I think I'm doing everything right. So it's not a bad idea to have a third party at least perform that function. And sometimes, we just do that for firms. We just do like the annual review. For some firms, we just do like one service. For many firms, we can do everything under the kitchen sink and basically like be their compliance department.
Mhm. I bet you have countless examples of how you've been able to help clients. I mean, sometimes, they're probably in dire need if they get a letter and they're like, "Oh man, we got to deal with this big problem, this big inquiry." So you come in and really help them, and it's a big weight off their chest or their back, so to speak. And so, is there like an example of maybe how you've worked with a client? Doesn't need to be kind of that picture I painted, but like how you've been able to add value or really help a client with their compliance needs.
SEC exams, the pendulum can swing from just like a new registrant exam, which is sort of quick and easy. And in my mind, like if they have a proper program set up, because really the SEC comes in to just kind of like kick the tires, make sure you have all the proper controls and policies and procedures in place, and you look like you're set up properly. Whereas, more mature firms, depending on how the exam goes, I mean, the exam can go in a bunch of different ways. I mean, the SEC can start to find some things that they feel are problematic. And then, I mean, we've had exams that can go on for years, literally years, not just like a couple of months. I mean, I think the normal exam probably runs maybe anywhere from 4 to 9 months, but it can literally go on years. So I think, we do have former regulators on our staff. We have former CCOs, like myself, who have also already been in exams and have that experience. And hey, I'm not going to lie, it's stressful. They're there to find things, right? So there is that pressure. And we also work with their counsel. They'll also, have counsel involved, but formulating responses, making sure we're steering the SEC in the right direction and not wasting their time having them go down, certain rabbit holes. Because sometimes, they're quite complex and they've got maybe some products that they're not familiar with. Like I know there was a big sweep with BDCs, business development companies, and a lot of the staff that was doing those, it was sort of like an education period on the regulatory framework for those. But certainly it's nice to have experienced people who have been through it before, and so that these CCOs don't feel like they're going it alone.
We're running up on time. I do have a couple final questions that I like to ask this gets more to like the personal, who you are. Can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Yeah, sure. It's really hard to pick one because I had a lot of great coaches over the years as a player, but I did have a high school coach that, she had the real unique ability of being both challenging and supportive. And I always found that that's always an art rather than a science, making sure, you're pushing yourself, yet you're also feeling like you're supported and not being like too beaten down. And then I worked for a guy named Keith Van Aaron in Maryland. He was a former like Baltimore Blast indoor soccer player. And he ran these camps and he just had a knack of making everything fun. And, if you think about sports, I mean, a lot of the things you do are super repetitive, right? You're doing the kind of the same drills, the same, moves, just refining these nuanced things. But he always had a way of just making everything a lot of fun. So I've always kind of taken that away to try and make sure we incorporate fun and not take everything so seriously, because we are in a very serious industry dealing with these regulators.
Right. Okay, last question. Can you tell us about a charity cause or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I'm a yoga teacher and I have taught meditation and yoga in the city for many years. I know that it's helped me a lot. So it's something that, I just always wanted to share. I'm just a big proponent of mental and physical well-being. And geez, I mean, I don't know how people live in this crazy city of New York without doing something like that, just to keep yourself balanced and reduce stress and just improve your overall health, really.
And for those listening, and I like this topic of meditation actually, for those listening, what's an easy entry point to just try it? What would you recommend for meditation?
There's lots of breathing techniques out there. I would say you can even just go on YouTube and find something, but really any kind of like controlled breath work can just help relax your nervous system and just, help you get centered. And I think a lot of meditation ties to breath. So if you can just do some kind of like inhale for 8, hold for 5, exhale for 8, any kind of like system like that can really be helpful. It doesn't have to be, one specific type of meditation, but just do something with the breath and sitting still. And I think you'll get results.
Excellent. Well, Colleen, I really enjoyed spending time with you and chatting a bit. Thank you again for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks, RJ.